The great chamber was filled with the sound of many voices speaking at once. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in their special seats, each one designed for their different bodies. Some had tentacles, others had wings, and many looked nothing like the humans who sat in the small section marked Earth. Ambassador Min-jun Kim sat quietly in his chair, watching the chaos around him. His dark suit looked simple compared to the bright robes and strange armor worn by the other representatives. His calm face showed no fear, even though everyone in the room was talking about the end of his world. At the center of the chamber stood Supreme Commander Vex's Tar of the Draknari Empire. He was tall and covered in dark scales that caught the light. His red eyes glowed with anger. As he spoke to the assembly, behind him, a huge screen showed images that made many representatives gasp in fear. "Look at this fleet," Vextar said, his voice echoing through the chamber. 10,000 warships. Each one can destroy a moon. Each one carries weapons that can crack a planet in half. The screen showed ship after ship floating in the darkness of space. They were massive metal beasts with weapons pointing in every direction. The ships went on forever, like a metal ocean in the void. The Hegemony Coalition controls 47 species, Vextar continued. We rule 60% of all known space. Our armies have never lost a war. Our weapons have never failed to destroy our enemies. Some representatives whispered to each other. The Etherians, who looked like tall blue beings made of light, shook their heads sadly. They had always been peaceful, but they would not fight the Draknari for anyone. The Merchant Guild representatives counted numbers on their devices, already calculating how much money they could make from selling human colonies to the hegemony. Even the Silvani, who were plant-like beings and had been friends with humans for many years, looked down at their roots sadly. They could not help Earth against such a powerful force. The human colonies have 3 days to surrender, Vextar announced. All outer worlds must submit to hegemony rule. Earth must give up its independence and become part of our empire. If they refuse, we will destroy every human world, every human ship, and every human life. Many representatives nodded. It seemed like the only choice. The humans were so weak compared to the Draknari. They had only 300 ships, and their weapons were old and simple. They had no energy shields, no planet-killing bombs, no massive armies. It would be like insects fighting against giants. Min-jun raised his hand. The chamber grew quiet as all eyes turned to him. He stood up slowly, his movements calm and sure. He was not a big man, and he did not look scary or powerful. But something in his quiet confidence made everyone listen. "I request permission to address the council," he said in a clear voice. The council leader, an ancient being whose species had been mediating galactic disputes for thousands of years, nodded. "The representative from Earth may speak." Min-jun walked to the center of the chamber. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. He looked around at all the different alien faces watching him. Some looked sorry for him. Others looked curious. A few looked hungry, already planning to divide up human territory. He stopped in front of Vextar, who towered over him like a mountain of scales and muscle. The Draknari commander smiled, showing teeth like knives. "Do you surrender?" Vextar asked. "Do you accept the wisdom of submitting to the hegemony? Your species can survive as our servants." Min-jun looked up at him without fear. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the entire chamber. "Do you dare attack Earth?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. But it was not spoken with anger or threat. It was asked like someone might ask about the weather. Calm and simple. This confused everyone in the room. Vextar laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "Do we dare? Human? We have destroyed civilizations that were 1,000 times stronger than yours. We have turned suns into weapons. We have made entire species extinct. What could possibly protect your pathetic little world?" Other representatives started talking again. They agreed with Vexistar. What could Earth possibly do against such power? The humans had no secret weapons, no hidden fleets, no super technology. Everyone in the galaxy knew that humans were one of the weakest species in space. Minjun waited for the noise to die down. Then he asked his question again, exactly the same way. Do you dare attack Earth? The chamber grew quiet again. There was something in his voice that made everyone uncomfortable. It was not fear or desperation. It was not even confidence in the normal sense. It was something else. Something that made experienced warriors and ancient diplomats suddenly feel uncertain. You should ask yourselves, Minjun said, his voice still calm and steady, why humanity has never started a galactic war. He paused, looking around the chamber, at all the alien faces, but has never lost one either. Vextar's smile faded. Around the chamber, representatives who had seemed bored suddenly paid attention. Even the ancient council leader leaned forward in his seat. Minjun turned to walk back to his chair, but before he sat down, he said one more thing. 3 days, you said. That should be enough time for you to remember why that question matters. He sat down and folded his hands in his lap, waiting calmly, while the entire Galactic Council tried to figure out what he meant. In 3 days, they would understand. In 3 days, they would remember why humans were different from every other species in the galaxy. The chamber filled with confused voices, as representatives tried to understand what had just happened. But Minjun just sat quietly, watching and waiting for the Draknari to make their choice. Elder Zareth floated back to the sacred chamber where the memory crystals waited. The tall blue Etherean moved like flowing water, his light body rippling with worry. Minjun's question bothered him in a way he could not explain. There was something important he was forgetting, something the crystals would remember. The memory crystals were huge structures that stored every moment of Etherean history. They glowed with soft light and hummed with ancient power. Zareth placed his hands on the central crystal and spoke the question that burned in his mind. Show me the wars with humans. The crystal flashed bright white. Then, images began to flow through Zareth's mind. He saw the first time his people had met humans, 300 years ago. Back then, the galaxy was controlled by the Korthak Empire, a species of metal-bodied warriors who conquered everything they found. The images showed human colonies being attacked by Korthak fleets. The humans fought back with their simple ships and basic weapons. Everyone expected the Korthak to win easily. The humans were new to space, weak and small compared to the empire that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. But something strange happened. The war lasted only 6 months, and then it ended in a way nobody expected. Zareth watched the memory of the final battle. The human fleet was surrounded and almost destroyed. Their leader, Captain Sarah Lee, sent a message to the Korthak commander. Everyone thought she would surrender. Instead, she offered to meet and talk. The Korthak laughed at first. They landed on a small moon to hear what the defeated humans would say. Captain Lee came with only 2 other people. No weapons, no guards. She sat across from Supreme Warlord Thaxmor and spoke words that changed everything. Your people are dying, she said simply. The same gene plague that killed your ancestors is coming back. Your scientists cannot stop it, but ours can. The Korthak had hidden this secret for generations. Their proud warrior race was slowly dying from a genetic disease. They conquered other worlds, desperately searching for a cure, but they never found one. Why tell us this? Thaxmor had asked. We are your enemies. Because we don't want enemies, Sarah Lee replied. We want neighbors. The humans shared their medical knowledge freely. They worked with Korthak scientists to create a cure for the gene plague. They asked for nothing in return, except an end to the war. Within a year, the Korthak Empire had completely changed. They freed their conquered worlds and became protectors instead of destroyers. Thaxmor himself became one of humanity's closest allies. and his people still remembered Captain Lee as the human who saved their race. Zareth pulled his hands away from the crystal, but the memories kept flowing. He moved to another crystal, one that held more recent events. On the trade world, Nexus Prime, merchant Prince Zoltar was having the same uncomfortable feeling. The old trader had lived through many wars and seen many species rise and fall. Minjun's question reminded him of something he wanted to forget. Zoltar called up his private records and searched for files about the corporate wars. 20 years ago, 3 massive trading companies had taken control of entire star systems. They made slaves of billions of workers, forcing them to work in terrible conditions for almost no pay. The corporations had private armies and controlled the flow of goods across the galaxy. Even the Galactic Council could not stop them because they owned too many important resources. Then the humans got involved. But they did not send armies or fleets. Instead, they sent economists and social scientists. These humans studied the corporate systems and then did something nobody expected. They started teaching. Human experts went to the slave worlds and began showing workers how to organize themselves. They shared ideas about fair wages, safe working conditions, and workers' rights. They introduced something called profit sharing, where workers got part of the money their work created. The corporations tried to stop them. But how do you fight against people who are giving away knowledge for free? How do you battle against ideas that make people's lives better? Within 5 years, the corporate wars were over. The 3 mega companies had either changed their ways or collapsed completely. The former slave worlds became prosperous trade partners, and the workers who had been treated like property became the foundation of a new, fairer economy. Zoltar remembered how angry he had been at the time. The humans had destroyed a system that made him rich, but he had to admit that the new system worked better for everyone, including him. Deep in space, at the Scientific Consortium's main research station, AI construct Omega-7 was processing similar memories. The artificial intelligence had perfect records of everything that happened in the galaxy, and Minjun's question had triggered a search through files marked critical historical events. The files brought up the Plague Years, the most terrible time in galactic history. An extinct species called the Devourers had created a bioweapon before they died. The weapon was designed to kill all organic life in the galaxy, leaving only empty worlds for machines to inhabit. The plague spread from world to world, killing billions. Every species lost entire populations. Even the greatest medical minds in the galaxy could not find a cure. Panic spread faster than the disease itself. Then human scientists made an announcement that shocked everyone. They were abandoning their own research projects and dedicating their entire scientific community to finding a cure for the plague. Not just a cure for humans, but a cure for every organic species in the galaxy. Human doctors worked for 2 years without stopping. They barely slept, barely ate, and many of them caught the plague while trying to save others. When they finally found the cure, they did something that seemed impossible. They gave it away. No payment required, no trade agreements, no political demands. They simply broadcast the formula to every world in the galaxy and sent ships to help distribute the medicine to places that could not make it themselves. The cure worked perfectly. The plague that could have ended all life in the galaxy was stopped completely. Billions of lives were saved by humans who asked for nothing in return. Omega-7 processed this data and compared it to hundreds of other events. Every time humans got involved in a galactic crisis, the same pattern appeared. They did not conquer or control. They helped and healed. They turned enemies into friends, and they made the galaxy better for everyone. Back in the council chamber, representatives from dozens of species were remembering these same events. The question, "Do you dare attack Earth?" was making them think about what humans really were. They were not the strongest species. They were not the smartest or the fastest or the most advanced. But they had something else. Something that made them different from everyone else in the galaxy. They had the strange ability to make things better simply by caring about others. Supreme Commander Vex Tar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. 10,000 hegemony warships floated in perfect formation at the edge of the Sol system. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, and it was all pointed at one small blue planet. "Begin charging the planet crackers," he ordered. "In 6 hours, Earth will be nothing but space dust." Admiral Korth, his second-in-command, nodded and began giving orders. But something bothered him about the human response, or rather, the lack of response. Earth's small defense fleet had not moved to intercept them. No desperate calls for help had gone out to their allies. The planet seemed to be ignoring the massive threat hanging over it. Back in the council chamber, real-time broadcasts showed the hegemony fleet preparing for attack. Many representatives watched sadly, knowing they were about to witness the destruction of an entire species. Others calculated what they could gain from humanity's defeat. Min Jun sat calmly in his chair, watching the displays without any sign of fear. His hands were folded in his lap, and his face showed only mild interest, as if he were watching a weather report instead of his world's death sentence. "Ambassador Kim," said the council leader, "your planet has less than 6 hours. Will Earth surrender?" Min Jun stood up slowly and smiled. "My people are preparing a response." On Earth, President Park Ji-hye stood before cameras that would broadcast her words across the entire galaxy. She was a small woman with kind eyes, and she spoke in a voice that was calm and warm. "People of the galaxy," she began, "today, we face those who would destroy us out of fear and anger. Our response will show who we truly are." She paused and looked directly into the camera. "Effective immediately, Earth is opening all of our archives. Every piece of human knowledge, every scientific discovery, every medical breakthrough, every piece of art and music and literature we have ever created is now being broadcast freely across the galaxy. No restrictions, no passwords, no cost. It is our gift to all intelligent life." Across the galaxy, receivers began picking up massive data streams from Earth. The information was staggering in its scope. Scientific formulas that could advance civilizations by centuries. Medical cures for diseases that had plagued species for millennia. Agricultural techniques that could end hunger on 1,000 worlds. The cure for Xerion syndrome, which had killed millions of Centauri every year for generations, was freely available for download. Advanced terraforming methods that could turn dead worlds into gardens. Art and music that spoke to universal themes of hope, love, and the beauty of life. "But we are not stopping with knowledge," President Park continued. "As I speak, relief ships are launching from Earth and all human colonies. They carry medical supplies, food, rescue equipment, and volunteer workers. They go not to worlds that can pay us back, but to worlds that need help the most." In the hegemony fleet, Admiral Korth received the first reports with confusion. "Sir, we're detecting thousands of ships launching from human space." "Attack ships?" Vex Tar demanded. "No, sir. They appear to be medical vessels and supply ships. They're not heading toward our fleet at all." Vex Tar stared at the tactical display. Instead of mobilizing for war, the humans were sending help to others. It made no sense. Why would a species facing extinction waste resources on charity? The first human relief ships reached Draknari territory within hours. They broadcast simple messages. "We come to help. We ask for nothing in return." On Draknari Prime, the homeworld of Vex's Tar's people, human medical teams began setting up clinics in the industrial districts. Dr. Kim Yoon-ji, a young woman who specialized in environmental medicine, worked alongside her team to treat civilians suffering from poisoning caused by the Draknari military's weapons factories. The treatments worked immediately. People who had been sick for years were healed in days. Word spread quickly through the population that humans were saving lives, while their own government had ignored the suffering. "Why do you help us?" asked a Draknari child whose breathing problems disappeared after treatment. "Your people said we are your enemies." Dr. Kim knelt down to the child's level and smiled. "Nobody is our enemy. We are all just people trying to live good lives." Similar scenes played out across 47 hegemony worlds. Human engineers repaired infrastructure that had been neglected, while the military built more warships. Human teachers shared educational technology that helped oppressed populations learn about concepts like democracy and freedom. Human diplomats met with local leaders and asked simple questions. What do your people need to be happy? In the hegemony fleet, the reports coming in began to terrify Admiral Korth more than any enemy weapons could. Civilian uprisings on 17 worlds. Not violent revolutions, but organized demands for basic rights inspired by human broadcasts about self-determination. Even worse, his own crew was beginning to question orders. When communications officers learned that human doctors were treating their families back home, asking for nothing in return, they wondered why they were preparing to destroy such people. "Sir," reported communications officer Zaratel, Vextar's own daughter, "I'm receiving a message from Draknari Prime. The human medical teams have," unquote. "They've cured my son." Her voice broke with emotion. For 3 years, her child had suffered from the genetic curse that plagued Draknari nobility. The best doctors in the Empire had said nothing could be done. But human doctors had fixed the problem in a single day. "How can we destroy the people who gave me back my child?" she whispered. Vextar felt something crack inside his chest. Around the galaxy, the same thing was happening to thousands of hegemony officers. The humans were not fighting back with weapons. They were fighting back with kindness, and it was more devastating than any bomb. In the council chamber, Minister Li Sujin stood to address the representatives. She was Earth's cultural attaché, a thoughtful woman who studied how different species lived and worked together. "Many of you wonder why we respond to threats this way," she said. "You think we should build bigger weapons or stronger shields. But we learned something long ago that changed how we see conflict." The chamber was completely quiet as she spoke. "We discovered that the only way to truly defeat an enemy is to make them your friend. Conquest creates resistance that lasts for generations, but compassion creates loyalty that lasts forever." On the tactical displays, more reports came in. Hegemony worlds were declaring independence, not through violence, but through coordinated, peaceful resistance. The relief ships continued their work, asking nothing in return, accepting no payment except the friendship of those they helped. The greatest military force in galactic history was being defeated by doctors, teachers, and engineers who carried no weapons at all. The reports flooding into the Hegemony Command Center painted an impossible picture. Across 47 conquered worlds, the unthinkable was happening. Species that had been crushed under Draknari rule for centuries were standing up, not with weapons, but with hope. Admiral Korth read the latest intelligence briefing with growing alarm. "Sir, the situation is deteriorating rapidly. 17 worlds have declared independence in the last 6 hours. But they're not fighting us. They're just refusing to obey." Vextar stared at the tactical display showing his crumbling empire. Red markers indicated worlds in rebellion, and new ones appeared every few minutes. But there were no battle reports, no destroyed cities, no dead soldiers. The humans had somehow inspired a galactic revolution without firing a single shot. "How is this possible?" he growled. "We have armies on every world, weapons pointed at every city. Why aren't our forces stopping these uprisings?" The answer came from his own daughter. "Communications." Officer Zaratel looked up from her station with tears in her eyes. "Sir, many of our soldiers are refusing to act against civilians who are being helped by human medical teams. Some are even deserting to protect the humans from potential retaliation. On the mining world of Kethvar, the pattern was repeating itself. Human engineers had arrived to find a population slowly dying from toxic exposure in the ore extraction facilities. The Dragnari overseers had known about the problem for decades, but chose to ignore it because fixing it would be expensive. Engineer Park Min-ho and his team spent 3 days designing a simple filtration system that could be built with local materials. They showed the Kethvar workers how to construct and maintain it themselves. Within a week, the air in the mines was clean for the first time in living memory. "You save our children," said Elder Kektor, the unofficial leader of the Kethvar miners. "Our own rulers watch them die and do nothing. How can we serve people who care more about metal than life?" The next day, the entire mining operation shut down, not through sabotage or violence, but because the workers simply walked away. They sent a message to the Dragnari government. "We will return to work when you treat us like living beings instead of tools." Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. On the farming world of Veltar, human agricultural specialists introduced crop rotation techniques that could triple food production while healing damaged soil. The hegemony had been slowly strip mining the planet's fertility for short-term gains, but the humans showed how to make it productive for thousands of years. "Your leaders take everything and give nothing back," explained Dr. Cho Heijin to a gathering of Veltar farmers. "But you deserve to have enough food for your families and healthy soil for your children." Quote, the farmers listened carefully, and then they made a choice. They would use the human techniques, but they would keep the extra food for their own people, instead of shipping it to feed Dragnari armies. For the first time in generations, no child on Veltar would go hungry. Back on the Hegemony flagship, the impossible reports kept coming. World after world was slipping away from their control, and there was nothing the military could do about it. You cannot bomb people for refusing to be miserable. You cannot destroy hope with weapons. "Sir," Admiral Korth said quietly, "I'm receiving communications from fleet commanders throughout the Armada. Many are requesting permission to stand down." "Stand down?" Vex, Tar's voice was dangerous. "We have not even begun the attack. Over with. Over with. Over with. Over with. Over with." "Sir, the crews are learning that their families back home are being treated by human doctors who ask for nothing in return. They're having trouble understanding why we want to destroy people who are healing their children." Vex Tar turned to look out at his massive fleet. 10,000 warships, the pride of the Dragnari Empire, and he was losing them without a battle. The humans had done something no enemy had ever managed. They had made his own people question why they were fighting. In the council chamber, representatives watched the unfolding crisis with amazement. Elder Zareth of the Etherians spoke for many when he said, "In all our recorded history, we have never seen anything like this. An entire empire is collapsing, but no one is being killed. How is this possible?" Minjun stood to answer. "It is possible because we learned that people only fight when they believe they have no other choice. Give them hope, give them a better way, and they will choose peace. Every time." The broadcast from Earth continued to pour out information. Scientific formulas, medical procedures, artistic works, and philosophical writings flowed freely to every world in the galaxy. But more than just knowledge, the broadcasts carried something else. Examples of how different species could live together in peace. Videos showed human cities where dozens of alien species worked, lived, and raised families together. Children of different races played together in parks, while their parents collaborated on projects that benefited everyone. Former enemies had become close friends, united by shared goals and mutual respect. "This is what we offer," President Park Ji-hye said in her latest broadcast. "Not conquest, not control, but partnership. Not subjects, but friends. Not an empire built on fear, but a community built on hope." On the Dragnari flagship, Communications Officer Zaratel received a personal message that changed everything. It was from her son, the child who had been cured by human doctors. "Mother," the young voice said, "the human doctor asked me to send you this message. She said to tell you that she has a son too, and she understands how much you love me. She wanted you to know that no matter what happens, she will make sure I stay healthy. She said that mothers should never have to choose between their children and their duty." Zaratel stared at the message for a long moment. Then she turned to her father, the supreme commander of the most powerful military force in the galaxy. "Father," she said, her voice steady despite her tears, "I cannot fight people who saved my child. I will not give orders that might harm those who showed my family mercy when they had no reason to do so." Around the bridge, other officers nodded agreement. How could they destroy people who had made their lives better? How could they attack those who had given them hope for a better future? Vextar looked around at his command crew, his own daughter, his most trusted advisors. In their faces, he saw the same realization that was spreading across his entire empire. The humans had not conquered them with force. They had conquered them with something far more powerful. They had shown them what life could be like when people chose to help each other instead of hurt each other. The greatest military commander in galactic history was learning that there are some battles that cannot be won with weapons. The moment of choice had arrived. Supreme Commander Vextar stood alone on the bridge of his flagship, watching his empire dissolve around him like salt in water. The tactical displays showed a truth that no military academy had ever taught him. Sometimes the strongest force in the universe is not weapons or armies, but simple kindness. 47 worlds had declared their independence from the hegemony, not through violence, but through quiet determination, inspired by human examples. His own fleet commanders were requesting permission to abandon their posts. Even his daughter had chosen compassion over conquest. "Sir," Admiral Korth said softly, "the Council is requesting a direct communication link. They want to hear from you personally." Vextar nodded slowly. He had spent his entire life believing that strength came from the ability to destroy. Now he faced people who had found strength in the ability to heal, and he did not know how to fight such an enemy. The communication link opened, showing the Galactic Council chamber. Representatives from hundreds of worlds watched as the great Draknari commander appeared on their screens. But the confident conqueror was gone, replaced by someone who looked tired and confused. Minjun stood up from his seat and walked to the center of the chamber. His movement was calm and respectful, showing no triumph or mockery. When he spoke, his voice carried across space to reach the man who had threatened to destroy everything he loved. "Commander Vextar," Minjun said, "we have an offer for you." Vextar laughed, but there was no humor in it. "An offer? I came here to destroy your world? And now you want to make deals? We offer you what we have offered every species we have ever met," Minjun replied. "Friendship, partnership, a chance to build something better than what came before." On the screen behind Minjun, new images appeared. They showed Draknari Prime, the dying homeworld of Vextar's people. The planet was covered in toxic clouds from centuries of industrial pollution. Most of the surface was barren wasteland, where nothing could grow. "We have studied your world," Minjun continued. "Our scientists believe we can heal the damage. Advanced terraforming techniques could restore your atmosphere within 50 years. Medical research could eliminate the genetic disorders that plague your people." Vextar stared at the images of his ruined homeworld. "What do you want in return? What is your price for this miracle?" "Release the conquered worlds," Minjun said simply. "Let them choose their own governments. Join the galactic community as partners, not conquerors. Help us build a future where no species needs to be afraid of any other." The council chamber was completely silent. Even the eternal whisper of air circulation systems seemed to pause. Representatives who had seen countless wars and treaties knew they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. "You would help us," Vextar said slowly, "after we threatened to destroy you?" "Commander," Minjun replied, "we would help you because you threatened to destroy us. People only attack others when they are afraid or desperate. We want to fix the problems that made you feel like conquest was your only choice." At that moment, another voice joined the conversation. Communications. Officer Zaratel appeared on screen beside her father, her young face streaked with tears, but her voice steady. "Father, I just received another message from the human doctors. They want to establish a permanent medical station on Dragnari Prime. Free treatment for any genetic disorders. Free training for our own doctors. Free research to help us understand and fix our biological problems." She looked directly at the camera, speaking to the entire Galactic Council. "They're not asking for payment. They're not demanding anything. They just want to help. Because they can. And because they believe our children deserve to grow up healthy." Vextar closed his eyes. In his mind, he could see his grandson, the next generation of Draknari leadership. The boy suffered from the same genetic curse that had weakened their bloodlines for centuries. Human medicine could fix that. Human medicine could give his family, his entire species, a future they had thought was impossible. When he opened his eyes, he was no longer looking at enemies. He was looking at people who had offered him the one thing his armies could never conquer. "Hope. What guarantees do I have?" he asked. "How do I know you will not enslave us once we surrender our weapons?" Minjun smiled sadly. "Commander, if we wanted to enslave you, we would have attacked your worlds while your fleets were here, threatening us. If we wanted to destroy you, we would have poisoned your people instead of healing them. We could have done many harmful things, but we chose to help instead. That is your guarantee." Around the chamber, representatives from dozens of species stood up. One by one, they began to speak. The Kethvar mining delegate. "The humans saved our children from toxic poisoning. We stand with Earth." 1. Afrand. 1. The Veltar farming representative. "They taught us to heal our soil and feed our families. We choose friendship over fear." Even former hegemony allies began to speak. The Zenthi warrior caste, who had fought alongside the Draknari for generations, sent their own message. "Honor demands that we repay mercy with loyalty. The humans have shown us a better way to be strong." Vextar listened to species after species, choosing humanity's vision of peace over his empire of conquest. But they were not choosing out of weakness or fear. They were choosing because the humans had shown them something better. Finally, the great commander made his decision. He reached up and removed the ceremonial war crown that marked his authority over the hegemony coalition. The crown was made of metal from every world his people had conquered, a symbol of dominion and control. "I place this crown at your feet," he said, his image bowing slightly toward Minjun. "The hegemony coalition surrenders to your mercy." Minjun walked closer to the communication screen. When he spoke, his words were gentle but firm. "We don't want your surrender, Commander. We want your friendship. Keep your crown, but use it to build instead of destroy. Lead your people not to conquest, but to cooperation." Across the galaxy, the transformation began immediately. The massive hegemony fleet powered down its weapons and began distributing the relief supplies they had been carrying. Former enemies worked together to establish medical stations, educational centers, and agricultural projects. 6 months later, the Galactic Council met again in the same chamber. But this time, the hegemony coalition had been replaced by something new: the Cooperative Alliance. Representatives from 94 worlds worked together on projects that benefited everyone. Vextar, still wearing his crown but now called Coordinator instead of Supreme Commander, stood beside Minjun as they announced the latest joint project, a galaxy-wide medical research initiative that would eliminate genetic diseases from every known species. Today we prove, Vextar said, his voice carrying new warmth, that strength is not the power to destroy, but the courage to build. The humans taught us that the greatest victory is when everyone wins. In the audience, young beings from dozens of species sat together, learning from each other and playing games that transcended language barriers. Their parents worked on projects that made life better for everyone, regardless of which world they came from. The question, "Do you dare attack Earth?" had become a reminder that echoed through the galaxy. But now it meant something different. Now it meant, do you dare to be better? Do you dare to choose hope over fear? Do you dare to believe that even the greatest enemies can become the closest friends? The answer, written in the peaceful cooperation of countless worlds, was always the same. Yes, we dare.